I feel very called to become a member of the Catholic Church.
Love the Catholic Church. It's just the best place to be.
From the studios of EWTN, this is Open Line. In North America, call toll-free 1-800-585-9396. That's 1-800-585-9396. Outside North America, call 1-205-271-2985. You can also send an email to openline@ewtn.com.
Fasten your seatbelts. Father Mitch Pacwa is in the house for Open Line Wednesday here on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. If you've got a question for Father Mitch, get in the queue early. 1-800-585-9396. Toll free anywhere in North America, 1-800-585-9396. If you're outside the United States and Canada, your number is 1-205-271-2985, or you can send an email, openline@ewtn.com. I'm Jack Williams. The lovely and talented Elena Rodriguez has never looked lovely or been more talented. Back from Washington, D.C. in Snowmageddon. She's finally made it here, and her little Costa Rican self is just still shaking from the cold that she experienced in Washington. And she is back producing the program. Matt Gubensky is your call screener. He was in Lake Tahoe, so I got no sympathy for him whatsoever. And back from the shores of Lake Michigan, some, 50 or 60 years ago, is Father Mitch Pacwa.
Well, I moved away from Lake Michigan shores 20, I don't know how long, I guess 22 years?
Oh, that's not that long ago.
No, it's not that long. But glad to be here. And I was pointing out to Elena that, no complaining about the cold up in Washington. This is what the administration has been trying to reach. My only perplexity about all this is if they are having so much trouble being able to remove the snow when it does come, why do they want to end global warming? I mean, they just cleared off the train tracks yesterday in Washington. So my question is, don't you think that this will continue to embarrass you further? I just am asking.
1-800-585-9396.
I mean, after all, New York was able to clean up more quickly.
Well,
right?
we have some.
They're good at it. I think the federal government is going to embarrass themselves.
There are some snow white pieces of paper in front of you.
Well, let's try answering some of these questions. One is from Leo Araujo. I called you 2 weeks ago, and I recommended the book Salvations from the Jews by Roy Schumann. It's a great book. And Leo's getting one as well. However, my friend still would like some more chronological history about the church, and that she would get some data information. Leo, there would be one continuous history of the church is by Dr. Warren Carroll, and is put up by Christendom Press from Christendom University. And that goes from the beginning of the church till modern times. That may be what you're looking for if you want that kind of historical background. There are lots of other histories, but it depends on how detailed she wants. But as a medium level introduction, that would be good. And also something that for someone who is coming from a Jewish background, I recommend, because a real stumbling block is typically Pope Pius XII. Why didn't he do more to help the Jews during the war? And I want to urge that there's a Sister Marchioni, who's written a number of books that we have at our catalog that tells some wonderful, wonderful information about Pope Pius. And there's also a rabbi has come up with a great book recently based on work by other Jewish writers. I just cannot remember his name, but he, is undercutting the claim that Pius was Hitler's pope or anything like that. And then just out, and I started reading from Ignatius Press, is called A Church of Spies.
I've heard of that, yeah.
It's very interesting. And he's got the documentation showing that Pope Pius helped organize various attempts to overthrow Hitler. And that part of his reason for laying low is to not draw more attention to himself. Sort of like Frodo, when he did not want the, was it Sauron, to get attention to him. All the other attention was taken by Sauron to the other stuff going on in the great battle. Meanwhile, Frodo was quietly going right up to his realm, to Mount Doom, so he could destroy the ring. And Pius was apparently very involved, along with a lot of Jesuits. A lot of Jesuits, Father Delp and a number of others, were very intimately involved in trying to overthrow Hitler up through 1943. Then they got caught. But that, this something there. And here's something I didn't understand before. I got an email from Matt, from Anna Botello, about a book on how to do the Liturgy of the Hours. It's called The Divine Liturgy for Dodos, a step-by-step guide to praying the Liturgy of the Hours. And it's by Madeline Pecora Nugent. That's from Catholic Book Publishing. So that's a couple of those. And then, let's see here. Father Mitch, I'm a pastoral counselor in Piedmont, Alabama. I spent the past 40 years administering to mass spree and serial killers in America. Included are Ted Bundy, Charles Manson, Wayne Williams, and many others. During a visit with Ted Bundy shortly before his execution, when I began talking to him about his soul and salvation, he made the statement, "Eddie, I'm cosmic, and you would be better off if you were true." I followed by talking to him about Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and fielded several questions from him. He listened intently, but I never saw any outward indication of an inward change. My question is, what is your experience with psychopathic killers? Do you believe that they have the ability to accept Jesus Christ as their Savior? It's from Dr. Blackwelder, Dr. Edward Blackwelder, in Piedmont. Dr. Blackwelder, I've only really gotten to know one pathological killer. He killed his first person, I think, when he was 12, because he had insulted this young man's mother. And of course, I do believe that it would be possible for them to accept Christ. But if you heard today's gospel reading about the sower and the seed on the 4 kinds of soil, one path is, or one type of soil is the path, and the soil cannot get through, and the birds come and take it away, and that's a symbolic of Satan taking away the word. A lot of these pathological killers and other sociopathic personalities are pathways that have been stepped on so much by other people that their lives are hard, their hearts are hardened by being stepped on. And you can open up that kind of soul, but they need to be plowed with a lot of love, sometimes very tough love. It doesn't, being sugary sweet is not what I mean by any means. It's much more a concern that it would be a love that is authentic and carefully avoids them manipulating you. They're very, very good at being manipulated, and they're better at manipulating than other people are at detecting the manipulation. And you have to assume that. But it's possible that they could eventually be worn down. The sand of the sea exists because the waves wear it down into small pieces of sand, wear it down hard rock into pieces of sand. This would be also possible for them. But it would have to begin, the good sign is whether or not they gain the capacity to empathize with somebody else. That is one of the key problems for them. They don't have empathy for potential victims, so that the natural law, don't do to others what you don't want them to do to you, they don't think that that applies to them because they don't have empathy with their victims at all. And that's one of the reasons I am not flat against. I would want a lot of avisos over these programs in our schools that build self-confidence and self-approval, self-esteem. That's the word I'm looking for. The self-esteem. Why? Do I want them to hate themselves? Of course not. But I also know that sociopaths rank among the highest in self-esteem. That's like Bundy said, I'm a cosmic personality. He has unfettered self-esteem and no capacity to understand somebody else's self, no capacity for authentic humility. And those would be some of the preparations for the gospel, to soften up the pathway and to give them some depth.
1-800-585-9396 is our toll-free number with your questions for Father Mitch Pacwa on Open Line Wednesday. 1-800-585-9396, toll-free anywhere in North America. Open Line Wednesday rolls on.
From the archives, this is the wisdom of Mother Angelica.
Piety means that we all have one Father. The eternal Father breathed the soul into my body. Only God creates. And I forget the chances that we had of ever being created. But it goes into the millions. If they were selling tickets for 1 in 10 million, you wouldn't buy one. I wouldn't buy one. I think that'd be stupid. You don't have a chance. But you had not only a chance, but God decided to create you. And he created you with a specific degree of holiness that he wants from you. And that's what's so wonderful. We are created by God to be with him in heaven forever.
For more about Mother Angelica, visit EWTNRC.com.
Podcasts of Open Line are available within 24 hours of live broadcast. Go to EWTN.com and click on Multimedia.
This is Cardinal Sean O'Malley, Archbishop of Boston, Massachusetts.
This is Marcus Grodi, host of The Journey Home.
Hello, this is Archbishop Joseph Tobin of the Archdiocese of Indianapolis. You're listening to EWTN, the Global Catholic Radio Network.
This is Open Line on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. If you have a question or comment, call 1-800-585-9396. Outside North America, call 1-205-271-2985 or send an email to openline@ewtn.com.
Be sure to like EWTN on Facebook. Simply go to facebook.com/EWTN Radio Network. That's facebook.com/EWTN Radio Network. Father Mitch, did you have some additional information on the Pius XII?
Yes, it is Rabbi David G. Dahlin, D-A-L-I-N. Rabbi David G. Dahlin. It's called The Myth of Hitler's Pope. And that's a good book for your Jewish friend to read, Leo, and let her see from perspective of Rabbi Dahlin. And he, I believe, heavily uses Pinchas Lapid, who was a Jewish survivor who became a Nazi hunter, one of the foremost Nazi hunters in the post-war period. And he credited Pope Pius XII with saving more Jews than Stalin, Roosevelt, and Churchill combined. Because he smuggled so many out of Italy. As a matter of fact, the Pope's bedroom was given to be a maternity ward for the Jews that were hiding both at Castel Gandolfo and inside the Vatican. He moved to a cot, and he said they could have his room for the maternity ward for the people that were hiding out.
Head to the phones. That's what we're going to do now. Head to the phones.
Yes.
Our leadoff hitter today is Marshall in Fort Wayne, Indiana, listening on Redeemer Radio, FM 106.3. Marshall, thanks for holding on. You're on with Father Mitch.
Hello. I've been a Catholic for a little over a year.
Well, welcome.
Thank you. I actually converted from Protestantism. I was born and raised that way. So I've been kind of researching and learning about a lot of new things. One thing that I recently came across, and I've heard a lot of different opinions on this, I was wondering about anger and when anger is considered righteous or when it's considered sinful.
Okay.
Obviously, we see in the Bible where Jesus had gotten angry at a certain point, and I was wondering for us as humans when it's one way or the other.
That is an awesome question.
Yes, and also you should not forget the verse in Ephesians chapter 4, where St. Paul says, "Be angry, but sin not, and do not let the sun go down on your anger." Now, how can you be angry and not sin is the question. And one of the clues, Marshall, have you ever heard, or has anybody ever told you, or have you ever said that you lost your temper?
Yes.
Right. And that refers to a very common experience that human beings have where their anger takes over, it's an emotional reaction that takes over their ability to think clearly about a situation. They become so angry that they can't think, right? Do you know what I'm talking about there?
Yeah.
Okay, where people are yelling and screaming, and they cannot listen to the other person. And they basically, what has happened is their emotion of anger has taken control of their will, that is their ability to decide well, and their intellect, their ability to think clearly about what's going on. There is so that's one way in which it becomes sinful, when your anger takes control of your intellect and your will, and you don't think clearly and you don't make decisions clearly. That's when people start beating each other up, and also, that in their anger they just lose control of themselves. That's sinful. But there's also another kind of anger that is a cold anger. When it's, to me, as public figures, it's characterized by the difference between Adolf Hitler and Joseph Stalin. Hitler would be yelling and screaming and stomping his foot and smashing his hand and being insistent. And you see that anger against Jews and any communists and gypsies and all that, he just would go on, and it killed a lot of people. But on the other hand, Stalin's anger was more like the final circle of hell in Dante's Inferno, where his anger was dry ice. It was cold, and in fact, his anger was more effective in killing people than Hitler. The Nazis executed 10 million people. Stalin's communists, with their cold anger, killed 61.9 million of their own nation. And that is also, even though it's not the heated anger, the anger still has control over decisions that affect other people. And getting your anger out, whether it's hot anger like Hitler or cold as Stalin, that is still, something that becomes destructive. And there's there's a third way in which it becomes sinful. And that is when you are angry and it motivates you to get revenge, which is a little bit different than anger. Anger is an emotion, and revenge is what you are motivated to do by that emotion. But there's a righteous anger. For instance, parents can have a right, or I could say this as a former teacher. There are times you can have a righteous anger. I mean, at times I feel toward a number of people who commit grievous sins in public. I feel what I consider to be a very justified anger when people torture and kill innocents. That, of course you should be angry, and it's an anger that should motivate you to then take the time to think, what can we do and what kind of actions should I support? The emotion of anger is not sinful when it becomes a motive to correct what is wrong and to encourage you to be brave in dealing with what's wrong. But if it gets control of your decisions instead of motivating you to make good decisions, that's when it becomes sinful. Does that help?
Yeah, that does help a lot. Thank
Good.
you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Marshall. Appreciate the phone call, and welcome to your new home. We appreciate your phone call today. We'll head now to Ann Arbor, Michigan. Faith is listening on Ave Maria Radio, AM 990. Faith, you're on with Father Mitch.
Hello, Father Mitch. How are you doing?
I'm just full of spit and vinegar. What can we do for you?
Father, the reason why I'm calling is it's something that's been bothering me for a long time, especially like around election time. And I'm Chaldean, and I have a lot of cousins. Afu?
Shlonik.
Oh, I don't speak Arabic. I speak
that's Chaldani.
Yeah,
أنا بحكي عربي بس بكلباني شلونك is how are you?
Easy for you to say.
Yes.
So go ahead.
So the reason why I'm calling is I have a lot of cousins that were educated by the Jesuits in Baghdad. And an inordinate number of them are socialists, Father.
Of your relatives?
Afu?
Of your relatives? Your relatives are socialists?
But it's educated by the Jesuits, and it just makes me so angry. And they are staunch socialists who also call themselves Catholics, and they go to church, and they support Jesuit charities and things like that. And when you try to discuss that it's wrong to vote for a pro-choice candidate who's a socialist and so on, a lot of times you can't have a discussion with them. They'll try to humiliate you.
Okay, and what does that tell you immediately is that they don't know what they're talking about. As soon as they try to humiliate you, they are running away from the facts. And they're making it about you. So, challenge them about that. You, by humiliating the person with whom you discuss, you become a shameful person yourself. And, by the way, Faith, we're running right out of time. You want to hang on? Because I want to address just a couple more items in that.
Stay on the line, Faith. Father Mitch has more to say about that. We'll also talk to Glenn in Colorado, Anthony in New York, Frankie in Texas, Art in Indiana. We've got plenty of time for your phone calls. Open Line Wednesday with Father Mitch.
Something amazing is happening on EWTN. One wildly dynamic speaker and a team of young missionaries are on a cross-country road trip, spreading their message of hope in Christ. Their passion is awakening youth to the power of God's love. It's energetic, honest, affirming, like nothing you've seen on TV before. You're Amazing with Justin Fatika. Thursdays at 10 p.m. Eastern on the Global Catholic Network, EWTN.
Jesus had some pretty direct words about the poor. I'll sum them up for you. If you don't serve the poor, you will go to hell. Ouch, that stings. But those aren't my words, so don't kill the messenger. Read Matthew 25. Jesus' entire summary of the final judgment has to do with how we treat those in need. A heart that's unmoved by hunger, nakedness, homelessness, and thirst can't enter the kingdom. Thankfully, it's not too hard to do something about it. Go online and give regularly to your favorite charity that serves the poor. The internet has brought them to your doorstep. Carry gift cards to supermarkets and fast food places to give to the poor on street corners. And if you're able, join a local charity in a hands-on way. Getting to know the poor up close and personal reminds us what's most important in life and what's not. We need the poor more than they need us. This is Chris Stefanik from RealLifeCatholic.com on EWTN Radio.
Hey, Catholic high school and college filmmakers. Want to get your work seen in over 250 million homes around the world? Then enter the Cool to be Catholic commercial contest. We're looking for original 30 and 60-second spots that focus on Catholic themes. 3 grand prize winners will get an all-expense-paid trip to the EWTN studios in Birmingham, Alabama, and a guest appearance on Life on the Rock. To find out more and to enter, go to EWTN.com/cool2becatholic.
Making a difference. EWTN Radio.
This is Open Line on the EWTN Global Catholic Radio Network. If you have a question or comment, call 1-800-585-9396. Outside North America, call 1-205-271-2985 or send an email to openline@ewtn.com.
Tonight on EWTN Live, Father Mitch is going to have a little chat with Deacon Sabatino Carnazzo, who's the founder and director of the Institute of Catholic Culture. And what kind of work do those folks do?
It's educating about Catholic culture, and they also have a program of helping to give formation to nuns. You know, a lot of the young women coming into religious life did not have, a lot of background in catechism. That's also true a lot of seminarians. It's just not just the young women, it's the young men. And so they do a variety of things along that line. And you're just going to have to watch the show to hear the rest.
That's tonight at 8 Eastern on EWTN Television, and Friday night on Life on the Rock. Father Mark and Doug welcome author and blogger Dom Quaya, and he'll share his powerful conversion experience. That's Friday, 8 Eastern on EWTN Television. We're talking to Faith in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and Father Faith wants to know why you Jesuits turned her whole family into socialists.
Well, first off, Faith, let me ask you this.
Yes, Father.
Did your cousins then go from Heckema College and they went on to more Jesuit schools? Or did they go to other schools?
All their education was Jesuit, Father.
Mm-hmm.
And then...
in college, too?
Yes.
And what period was this? The 70s?
Probably early 60s or late 60s, because...
because Heckema was closed down by Saddam Hussein in, 68, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that well.
And the thing is, Father, it makes me so angry because they will actively promote the pro-choice so-called socialist candidates. It just makes me so angry, Father.
See, here's the thing, Faith. You don't get angry. That's not a reason to get angry. It's rather learning how to argue with them better. And first of all, I will guarantee that they did not learn to be pro-choice at Heckema or the other Jesuit schools. What I will guarantee happened, just because I saw it happen so frequently, is especially at the high school level, what they did would be learning correctly that you have to have a great concern to help the poor get involved in the economy and get the poor to be treated in a correct way, and so that they can enter into a better economic position. I know that was the standard teaching, and it's correct. You want to help the poor to do better. However, the mistake they made, especially coming from a state, a pretty heavily state-run economy like Iraq. Iraq, the economy was very much state-run, correct?
I was very young when I came here, Father.
Well, then, when you look back on the way the Ba'ath Party ran things in the economy, it was heavily state-run, and they were using an Iraqi model of state-run economy and applying it in a Christian way to the poor elsewhere. And so they come up with socialism as the answer. And what you then have to deal with, and this is how you learn, don't complain about them. Answer them and force them to think more clearly. That the state shows itself to be incompetent when it gets too involved in too many things. Soviet Union was classic example of a state-run economy that was a catastrophe, economically speaking. And China was also pretty bad until they allowed increased capitalism. India tried state-run socialism, and it was only after they let go of that, they then put in more of a capitalist model. That capitalism has brought about the greatest increase and exchange of wealth, so that now in the world's economy, we have the lowest rate of poor people. We don't, the American poor, even the people on welfare, are middle class and upper class in their wealth compared to people living in Africa, many parts of Asia, that they are very well off. Now, that's easy for you to say, you're in the middle class by American standards. Yes, but I also have been working in the poor countries, and I know from personal experience how the difference,
Take a little trip to the trash dumps in Manila.
Trash dumps in Manila, or along the border of Mexico, or anywhere else in Latin America. The trash dumps are filled with people trying to make a job, to get what they can out of it to eat, and to buy salvageable things. So, and frankly, we are at one of the best periods right now for economic wealth sharing. And could it be better? Yeah. But should the state make it better? No. And as I like to point out, you might try this with them. Ask them how much it costs the federal government to make a penny. The answer is 2 cents. So for every $1 billion worth of pennies, we taxpayers have to pay an extra $1 billion out of the pennies that we give them in order to make new pennies, because they're too incompetent to make a penny for under a penny. And and if they can't do something that small, why would we trust them with bigger things? That becomes the question. So come up with better arguments, and don't just blame the Jesuits. Deal with the arguments, because this is certainly a Jesuit who is not a socialist.
Next up is Glenn in Gilchrist, Colorado, listening on Denver Catholic Radio, AM 1060. Glenn, you're on with Father Mitch.
Hello, Father Mitch.
Yeah, what's up?
Hey, I just wanted to let you know I consider you the utmost authority on Catholic history. So.
No, I'm not. I just know a little bit here and there. But what can we help you with?
I guess gathering from my reading, when Jesus entered Jerusalem, there were thousands and thousands of people lining the streets, laying down the branches and their cloaks and stuff,
right.
Correct?
Yep.
Okay? What happened to all those people at the time of the judgment before Pilate?
All right,
Why
let me
didn't they
use
speak up their voice?
an analogy. There might be some people in this room who remember such scenes. A whole bunch of kids might be running around and making noise. And the teacher walks in the room. And the ringleader has his back to the door and keeps on doing it, and everybody else scatters. And it's somewhat analogous to that. When somebody who has actual authority catches somebody, people become afraid to stand up. And Christ was well aware of that. He knew human beings. He knew that you can have a cheering crowd, but if you don't have good leadership to help you to lead in a good direction, then everybody will scatter. That's why leadership is so necessary. And the apostles were totally unwilling to provide that leadership to stand with Jesus and save him. They could say they would, but they did not. And this is the same kind of normal human situation in the face of someone with power who had troops as well as the position of being procurator. And the face of a mob, the mob is going to scatter and they'll turn on you. They'll turn on you. So this is something that we should all keep alert to. Okay?
Next up is Anthony in the great state of New York. He's listening online. Anthony, you're on with Father Mitch Pacwa.
Father, how are you?
Full of spit and vinegar. What's going on up there in New York?
We're shoveling out. That's what we're doing.
Oh,
we just
see,
got
but
through this.
Look how much better at it than you are than Washington.
That's right. That's true.
I know they just were getting the trains running today. I mean, they make Mussolini look good.
That's a good one.
But I digress. What is your question?
My question is this past week, we've just celebrated the conversion of St. Paul.
Right.
And he's known as the bishop and also as an apostle.
Yeah, the apostle of the Gentiles.
Of the Gentiles.
Right.
All right. My question is, he was not present for 70 years before, when he was struck down. Christ had already died.
Right.
Now, at the Pentecost, when they received the holy tongues of fire, all the disciples, including the Blessed Mother and all the apostles, received this gift of tongues. Now, they were all assigned and they all went to Spain.
Right. No, so what's the point of your question?
My question is, did Paul receive the gift of tongues?
As a matter of fact, if you take a look at the beginning of 1 Corinthians chapter 14, he says, I speak tongues more than all of you. So yes, he did. But I'd rather speak 5 words of prophecy than 10,000 words in tongues. So yeah, he spoke in tongues. And the reason that he is called an apostle is not because of that, because other Christians received those spiritual gifts and received the Holy Spirit at Pentecost and at other times, but they did not become apostles. Cornelius did not become an apostle when he received the Holy Spirit and spoke in tongues and prophesied in the city of Caesarea Maritima. What made the distinction is Jesus Christ appeared to St. Paul personally on the way to Damascus and commissioned him to go to the Gentiles. You can read that in Acts chapter 9, and there are parallels, I think, in Acts 26. We had the readings that we had. The first reading on the conversion of St. Paul is the retelling of his conversion, and you see that when Christ appears to him and says, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? And he said, who are you? He said, I am Jesus of Nazareth. And then he tells him to go to the city, and then tells me that he will be sent to all the nations. So that's when he becomes an apostle, because an apostle means someone who has been sent. From the Greek word apostolein, to send. So Jesus sent him. That's how he became an apostle. Okay?
12. Only the 12 apostles received the gift the night before at the Last Supper, such as healing of the sick and doing that other stuff. Jesus says this is it.
No. The apostles on Easter night received the Holy Spirit and the power to forgive sins. But everybody could receive tongues, prophecy, gifts of healing. You see Philip, the deacon, he had a gift of healing, as did others. So there were a number of people that had the spiritual gifts. That doesn't make them apostles. What makes them apostles is Christ's commission. Okay? All right.
Next up is Frankie in the great state of Texas, listening on Sirius XM channel 130. Frankie, how are things in the Republic today?
Oh, a little sad today.
Why? What's wrong?
Well, last father here. My son is a junior at the Catholic high school.
Yeah.
And his
in which city?
11th grade religion class is called social justice.
Mm-hmm.
And the teacher said yesterday that the social justice of socialism/communism is the exact same as the social justice of the Catholic Church.
Well, bless his heart. What city is that in?
I better not say.
Okay,
a minority.
I understand.
I don't know if they're going to throw us out of here. You know what I mean? If I start raising a ruckus over things because.
Oh no! If you don't, you need to raise a ruckus because that's ignorance. There are elements within Catholicism that allow people who wish to share their goods in common. Notice in Acts chapter 5 that, and a couple of times in Acts of the Apostles, in fact, the Christians put their property in common for the use of everyone. Okay? Now, is that communism? Is this a male? Is it a male or female teacher?
Female.
Female. All right. Does she know what Marx meant by a state run by the proletariat, where the proletariat owns all the means of production? That is not the same as a Christian community that decides to share their property in common. Totally different. Or, again, it depends on the kind of socialism, but most socialist systems are state-run economies where the state controls and owns all the means of production. And in fact, they could not make communism work in Soviet Union as Marx delineated it because it was an agricultural society. And the proletariat did not own the means of production, namely the factories and such. It was rather the state that owned them and completely mismanaged them. And so how is a state-run economy like what the early church did or what religious orders do? The church allows people to freely associate as, say, religious. I'm a Jesuit and I don't own anything. My order owns everything that I use. I don't own my truck. My order owns my truck. I get to use it. And, and I don't get my wages. I've never seen a check from EWTN. It's sent immediately to my superiors without passing through me. I don't even know how much I make, and I don't care. And I get an allowance for food, clothing, and gas. From my province, presumably less than what I send them. But I freely chose to do that. Whereas in a socialist system, the state forces people to join that kind of economy. That is not what the church says. And here's what I would recommend that you do. And how old is your son? Is a son or a daughter?
Junior in high school.
Son. All right. So your son is a junior in junior high school or junior in high school?
High school.
He's a high school student. All right. Great. Then what I want you to do is go over to EWTN.com and go to our documents library and look up encyclicals. And there is an encyclical by Pope Pius the 11th. All right? Pope Pius the 11th. And it is called Quadragesimo Anno, or in English, on the reconstruction of the social order. Read through that and see what the church teaches about socialism and communism. And have your son read that with you. And then that is the Quadragesimo Anno means on the 40th year after the Pope Leo's encyclical on labor. And so, unions and stuff. So take a look at Quadragesimo Anno. You can get it down for free. Read through it and see if there is any support for communism or socialism. I've been tempted to say this. Do you know the Russian definition of capitalism and communism? Capitalism is man oppressing man. Communism is just the opposite.
Yeah, exactly. Well, unfortunately, it's not the only teacher in this school.
I know it.
He's very conservative, and he just fight. He says, "I just can't fight every day with these people." You know what I mean?
Yes.
So,
that's what they want to do, is wear you down instead of inspire you to think. And
right,
if he
exactly.
is, and that's what you want him to learn how to do his research, think, and end up knowing more than they know.
Right.
That's
exactly.
the goal.
That's what I told him. You can't just blurt off. You need to have facts behind everything. So this will help him tremendously.
Get that, okay?
All right, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Frankie. Next stop, Belleville, Illinois. Eric is listening on FM 90.3.
Well,
Eric, what's your question today?
This is to Frankie and his son. Gig 'em. All right. Eric, what you got?
Okay, I wanted to ask this, but you went to the Holy Land, so I get to ask now.
Okay.
There is a textual commentary from Pope Hippolytus on Daniel 4:23.
Yes.
Are you aware of it?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay, and then another thing I've seen is that St. Telesphorus is Pope, according to the Liber Pontificalis, instituted midnight mass. I wanted to know if those are actually real things, because I've heard people say that, those are kind of forgeries and those aren't real.
No, those are very real. As a matter of fact, they are studied by real patrologists. Now, here's the thing. With the Liber Pontificalis, people have some questions at times as to whether or not they were reading back certain things and that they're going on. In other words, there's a lot of material that would have been perhaps behind the Liber Pontificalis, which is not written, I think, until the 7th century. It's a history of the popes from the earliest days. And so that's taken as a little more questionable, not untrue, but just we can't always prove what's in there. But with the commentary by Pope, actually it was anti-pope. Hippolytus was the first anti-pope, but he resigned and was martyred along with the real Pope, Pontian. And today the church celebrates both their feast days together in August. And Hippolytus did say that Christmas was on the 25th. And here is what is extremely important for you to know, is that in the 18th and 19th century, a lot of people say, Christmas was determined only by the Christians trying to take over the feast of Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun. Is that what you're thinking about?
Yeah, I've heard all those arguments,
right?
And that's why I've gone to that.
And it's absolute nonsense because Sol Invictus, with the unconquered son, was not celebrated until the time of Emperor Aurelian, about 70 years after Hippolytus wrote that Christmas was on the 25th. Sol Invictus was an attempt by the pagans to take over Christmas, not the Christians taking over Sol Invictus. Did you know that?
Yes, I did know that. That's why I was asking for the...
This is a brilliant audience. I love it. I love it. But that is an authentic, it's a fragment. We don't have the whole commentary. We have only fragments of Hippolytus. But yes, that's quite authentic.
Okay.
All right.
So did St. Telesphorus institute midnight mass or not?
That I cannot give with the same amount of surety. I do know that Christmas was being celebrated on the 25th, going back to the 180s. Or people who lived in the 180s. I can get that data in another place, but that would be the earliest, and they based the date of Christmas on what do you call it? That they believed that the Annunciation was on March 25th because they believed that was the date of the crucifixion. So that Christ was born and died on the same date. And then 9 months after the 25th was Christmas. So that's how they came to that.
Thanks so much, Eric. Quickly, we'll go to Jason in Fredericksburg, Texas. He's listening on FM 91.1. Jason, we got about a minute left. Very quickly with your question, please.
Okay, real quick. I've recently been introduced to Byzantine Catholicism, and I'm very confused about some of the things like celebrating saints like Photius, and
they have let me just explain this real because we have such a short time. The Eastern Catholic churches that are Byzantine had at one point separated from the church, and then they reunited at different times. The Council of Florence and the Council of Brest and a couple others. And they have their own liturgical calendar. That the Roman Rite let them keep that, whereas the Orthodox Church has also its own calendar and different set of saints. The Eastern Rite Catholics are in union with the papacy. They maintain their identity, and may the Lord bless you and keep you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And say hello to everybody in Fredericksburg for me, Jason.
God bless.